Dating Skills Review, the central source for dating advice for men, brings you the Dating Skills Podcast.
Hey, this is Donovan with episode 33 of Dating Skills Podcast. In this interview, we're talking about texting, and more specifically, how to text women to get them out on dates with you. We've got Rob Judge from Date Other Girls on the show to talk about it. Rob is a pickup artist who first appeared in 2009 when some in-field videos were put online showing him picking up women in New York City. From there, he has built his profile with a lot of hard work and some great writing with books like The 4 Elements of Game and Magnetic Messaging, which is all about texting. Rob has been on the show before, way back in episode 4, so if you like today's show, go and look that one up. To stay up to date with the latest podcasts, reviews, news, and other free downloads from Dating Skills Review, go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/datingskillsreview and hit like. If you are more of a Google Plus guy, here's a cool new trick. Google Dating Skills Review, and you'll see a big Google Plus Dating Skills Review box appear to the right of the search results. Hit the box's follow button, and you're done. Now let's get started with this week's interview. Oh, hey, Rob, it's great to have you on the show this episode. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks, Angel.
And it's great to see you back on the show because way back in like episode 4, we had you on the show. So you were here right at the beginning of Dating Skills Podcast, basically. So it's been like 30 episodes since then. So it's great to like have you back on the show and get to talk again.
Very nice. It's a pleasure to be back on.
Yeah, I was just talking about how long that was ago. It's amazing how time flies, how fast it goes. I think that was like back in 2009, 2010, right? So, wow, like 3 years and still doing the dating coaching thing and going strong.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot has changed, but a lot has also, stayed the same.
Right. So today we're talking about the theme of texting. So this is basically something you've been working on for the last year. Is it something around the last year you've been focusing on a bit?
Well, it's funny because personally, I've been working on my texting skills for the last about 6 years since texting got really popular.
Yeah.
It's been a personal project of mine is just to get better at texting. But yeah, in terms of actually putting it out into a system and a product, it's been just over a year. We actually launched the book March 1st of 2012.
Right. And so that's a collaboration with Bobby Rio, right?
Yes, Bobby Rio.
Okay, man. Well, so, one of the things I just wanted to bring up here is like texting, like the whole world of mobiles and everything obviously has been moving very fast. And I know it's a little bit different in different countries. Like I can tell you, like the countries I've been in lately, there's like 7 different texting applications going on, and honestly, I have like 7 of them on my phone because different people use different texting things, and it's all getting a bit crazy. Is that something you find? That you're advising people on, like, which texting app should I be using, and or is it, just general stuff?
Well, that's a great point. And that's something we do address in the appendix of the book is, because even in the U.S., there's, WhatsApp, there's, even Facebook Messenger, there's Instant Messenger. I don't know. Do people still use Instant Messenger? I don't even know. But, definitely there are a lot of these different platforms for texting. And we do have some advice. You do want to tweak it a little bit based on which platform you're using because, say on like Facebook Messenger. Say you go on Facebook Messenger, which, first of all, I don't advise guys to talk to girls on Facebook Messenger. I think it's a bad idea. Okay. But some guys like that stuff, like the instant messenger stuff, like to be on, GChat or whatever and talk to girls. And one thing you have to realize, though, when you're on a texting application like that, rather than just straight phone texting she's having several conversations at once, how you're messaging her. Whereas when you're sending a text message from your phone, it's a little more personalized. So you can assume that realistically she's probably only talking to you. Maybe she's talking to one other person, but she's not talking to like several people like she would be if she was on some kind of instant messaging platform. So, and since so much of texting involves capturing a woman's full attention, you really need her full attention to kind of progress the interaction. You have to be cognizant of that. And that's exactly why I said earlier, I don't advise guys to be on texting platforms where she might be talking to multiple people at once.
Right, totally. Well, this is a nice segue into a question I wanted to ask you about, about the whole texting thing, really. Is this just a detail, or is this, like a really important skill that guys have to get handled? Right, so for guys getting into dating and stuff, is this something they should focus on and think about kind of early on, or is it a detail they should leave for a little bit later?
Well, it's funny because texting embodies a lot of the lessons that you need to learn in a pickup, on a date, whatever. Because texting essentially is, at its core, texting is simply learning how to communicate well with women and learning how to display your personality in an attractive way. Mm-hmm. But what's so great about texting, and why I advise guys who are even starting out to work on their texting skills, is because it's not as fast-paced as when a girl's in front of you. Because, every guy knows that, when you're reading a book on talking to women or picking up women, everything sounds like it makes sense. And it's like, oh, I could do this. And then all of a sudden you put an attractive girl in front of that guy, and suddenly it seems like things are coming at him at 100 miles per hour. Right. And it's very scary, and it's very daunting. So a lot of the times, that's why the learning process is so slow in learning this. It's not so much because the material is so hard. It's because there's so much emotion and so much nervousness and anxiety when unfortunately that's just the way it is. But the great thing about texting is a lot of that anxiety and nervousness is removed because you can text a girl, and it's okay if you wait 15, 20, an hour to respond to that girl. That's totally fine. So you can really put a lot of conscious thought into what you're saying, consider what she's saying, and it's not as fast paced as when you have a girl actually in front of you.
That's an excellent point that I hadn't actually thought of, but I can tell you, basically when I first read this stuff, the first time I ever did anything was on some messaging application, right? I think it was AOL Messenger or whatever was going on at that time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's totally right. That it makes it so much easier because you can think a little bit. I think I'd read David D'Angelo's original Cocky and Funny kind of stuff, and so I was practicing a bit of that. And it was so much easier because I could wait a little bit, and it was a lot of fun that way as well. So thanks for bringing it up. It's really about you can do this with removing the anxiety that surrounds the live talk, the face-to-face chat.
Exactly. And that way you could really practice the stuff that you're learning, whether, you take my advice or even the advice of some other dating instructor. If you're reading someone's advice, you're like, oh, this sounds like a cool thing. I want to try this style of communication. You don't have to worry about, oh my God, it's, I have to do it in this nerve-wracking situation. You can kind of do it from the comfort of sitting at, what I used to do when I was really learning this stuff was I used to work in an office, and I would sit at my cubicle, texting girls, and it was great because I could be texting girls all day and practicing communicating with them. And, it's almost like I'm getting paid to do it because I'm at my job, or I'm on the bus or on the train, and it's like you can really maximize your time and kind of keep yourself immersed in that classroom of learning to become better with women.
Right, and that's important too. Just the frequency of getting your head around this stuff. If you're thinking about it twice, 3 times a day instead of going out once a week, then it's going to make all that difference, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So, that's basically kind of like a training wheels kind of thing. Texting is a good thing to do when, texting girls is a good thing to do when you're learning, because it takes the pressure off, and it means you can do it a lot as well, and practice a lot. What other things would you say about the importance of texting? So I met a girl, I got a number. How important is texting from that point?
Well, that's also where it's crucial as well. The other side of the coin is there is a utility to text that can't be underestimated, enough, because the thing is, or overestimated enough, because the problem that most guys run into is that they go out, they get decently good at meeting women, at getting girls' phone numbers, even girls in a social circle, girls that they sort of know from school, whatever. But the thing is that if those numbers aren't translating into dates, then you're not going to be doing that well with women. Learning how to take a phone number and transition that into a date is such a vital skill that so many guys just kind of gloss over because oh, it's stupid, it's texting. A lot of guys like to get into the sexual escalation stuff. They like to get into the closing, which is great, and those are essential skills as well. But you can't gloss over the texting because then you're going to have a bottleneck where you're really good at flirting with girls, interacting with them, getting their phone numbers, but then, you're just kind of spinning your wheels if you're not getting those girls out on dates.
Okay. So is texting essential to that? I mean, do we have to text or can we call? What's kind of your ideas on that?
That's a great question. And when I first started, and keep in mind, when I got into this whole dating advice stuff, this was back when people were texting, but it wasn't as popular as it is today.
Right.
When I started going out and doing this, it was pre-smartphone era. It was before the iPhone. And I think the iPhone changed so much of the way people communicate. And again, a lot of people don't consider this, but smartphones really changed the game in a lot of ways, and especially changed this aspect of the game, the game of dating. So when I first started, I called girls a lot. I thought that it was a more manly thing to do. I was like, anyone can hide behind a phone and send up a text, but I'm going to be the guy who calls girls. And I thought I was being a chivalrous, brave dude by calling these girls, leaving them voicemails, trying to get them on the phone. And it really didn't work that well for me. And then when I started switching over to text, I started getting a much, much better response. So the first sort of rule of texting is to embrace the medium. A lot of guys like to get up on their alpha high horse and be like, oh no, you gotta call girls, texting is for pussies. Texting may be for pussies, but it's also for guys who get pussy, So that's something that you really have to wrap your brain around, is that, doing it the hard way in this instance isn't necessarily gonna get you better results. So realistically, texting, just because, from my results, from all my friends' results, from any guy who's good with women who I ever talk to, texting is just the better way to go about setting up dates with women.
Okay, so we can talk about that a little bit, because I know that you actually set up the dates with texting, because I saw that in your book.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wanted to talk about now is, you just brought up phone call, right, and being the man. And I think it goes back to what you're saying about training and taking the anxiety off. I think a lot of people have phone call anxiety. I don't know if that's a term people use, but it sounds like pretty major to me. I used to get it. I used to be like, like have a coffee before I called the girl to get my to get my strength up for the call or whatever, my energy levels up. So with texting, you don't have to do that. So that's great. But are there situations where it's better to call?
Yes, obviously there are going to be situations where it is better to call. Very rarely, but there are situations. One example I can think of off the top of my head is, say you had plans with a girl. Say you set up a date over text, and suddenly at the last minute she's like, oh, I'm tired tonight. I don't want to come out. That's when you should pick up the phone and actually call her, because that's when she's on the fence. She's sitting on the fence and she's like, oh, should I meet up with this guy? Should I not meet up with this guy? And maybe if you get her on the phone, something you say might knock her over the fence, where she's like, oh, okay, this guy is cool. He is funny. I'll go out with him. The reason that I tell guys, like, really to avoid calling unless you absolutely have to, is because when you call a girl, it's like walking this tightrope where if you just say one stupid thing, and we've all done it. I certainly am guilty of this, where I'll say one stupid thing and suddenly the girl says, oh, you know what, let me call you back in a minute. And she hangs up and you never hear from her again. Right. So the thing about text is that you could avoid that because you're putting conscious thought into what you're texting and you're really considering it. Because again, like a phone call is, again, it's more similar to that face-to-face interaction where things are moving very fast and you have to be very quick on your toes. And even for a guy who's pretty good, that could be very, very difficult. I've even had situations where I called a girl and we just had like a bad connection, and it was just, when you have a bad connection with someone, it's just like, it kind of infuriates you. And I've had girls just hang up, I'll call you back. And then they hang up and boom, and it's like game over. And it's like not even, not even my fault.
It's just terrible in that situation because it takes the energy out of the phone call. It just makes it that much harder. If she can't hear you properly, that really kills the vibe.
Oh, it really does.
So, the best thing is to get out of the phone call. It's just like, hey, this is a bad phone call. Let's get the hell out of here, and we'll call each other another time.
Definitely. But, then again, she might – what I found is girls might start reading into that. They might start being like, oh, we sounded a little nervous. This isn't the guy I remember meeting. It can – there's so many variables. One thing I had a friend say to me once, and I – really use this a lot to guide the way I interact with women, is that before you sleep with a woman for the first time, she's kind of looking for reasons to disqualify you. You know, it's funny. Like, guys, we're always looking for reasons to qualify girls. You ever hear a guy say, like, oh, you know, she's not the hottest girl, but, you know, she has a great set of tits. Or she's not the hottest girl, but, you know, she has a great personality. Like, we're always adding, but she has this, because we want to qualify a girl, because we're always trying to get our numbers up for sex. Like, we're trying to, like, have sex with more girls. Where girls are the exact opposite. They're always trying to keep their numbers down. So a lot of the times a girl might be like, yeah, he's cute, but, and, you know, and we've all heard girls say that. If you have any female friends, I've heard my female friends say, oh, you know, he's really cute. He took me on this nice date, but he was wearing green socks, and that's oh my god, okay, you know. So it's really funny how that's sort of the difference between men and women. So you have to keep in mind that most women are looking for reasons to disqualify you from sex. So you don't want to introduce any kind of variables that might lead to that. You want to take the path of least resistance, the path that's gonna you know, where there's you have the smallest margin of error. Right. And to me, that path is, you know, for better or worse, that's texting.
Right. I'd say that is, like, maybe my experience abroad, I've lived most of my life abroad the last 10 years, might have, like, put a different shade on this. Like, one of the situations where I choose to call a girl is where I think there's a misinterpretation, like, of the text. So, you know, I guess, like, on a phone call, I feel sometimes you have more control because you can hear how she's responding to you. You know, she'll make sounds. She's like, you know, you can hear that tone in her voice. But sometimes on text, it's a little bit more difficult. Like, especially if she just doesn't, like, respond to one of your texts, then you can't exactly be sure exactly what happened there. So, you know, one of the situations where I would just pick up the phone and call is basically where I think maybe she could have misinterpreted that last text. I'm not exactly sure where her head is right now. So I'll just call and I'll find out.
Yeah, you know, like you said, like, the idea of using it for damage control, I think, is a good use of a phone call. So I agree with you in that regard. But ideally, especially for a newer guy, I think keeping it off the phone as much as you possibly can. Like, to me, the phone call is like the last resort. The phone call is like, for me, it's like when texting isn't working or something happened and I have no other choice but to pick up the phone and call her. Right. That's the only time I'll call. So I agree with you that, like, you know, in a damage control situation or in a situation where she might be flaking, or where you know, it's sometimes girls just will say to you on text, hey, like why don't you ever call me, or why don't you give me a call? And in that situation, you know, sometimes girls do have this image in their head that they want a guy to call them. So I guess there is like an asterisk to the rule, always text a girl, and there are situations where you can break that rule. But I think, you know, in 95% of situations, texting is your best bet.
Right. And, you know, just to pull up what you said back there's also a situation where the girl wants to feel a little bit more comfortable, and hearing your voice can do that. You know, if she met you briefly before and you've been texting a bit, my experience is, like, sometimes they still want to hear your voice before they meet up, because they're like, oh, this guy, I kind of remember him and we've been texting and it's cool, but what does he sound like? I can't remember.
Yeah. You know what's funny is that if you get pretty good at texting, I've done this a couple times where I'll have a girl's number that I met like over a year ago. I've met girls in Vegas and like just randomly have been in, like, you know, the city that they live in or whatever. Yeah. And I'll start texting girls like a year later, and only because I think I'm pretty good at communicating my personality through text, and like my humor kind of comes through on text, that even if these girls haven't seen me in like a year, or even if we had a very brief interaction where they really didn't get to know that much of me, if you are pretty good at communicating your personality through text, these girls will still meet up with you without ever having to call them. So you know, sometimes just learning how to communicate your personality, which is the whole sort of purpose of magnetic messaging, is really getting guys to express themselves and express who they are and express their masculinity through text. If you could do that well, you can get out girls that even feel like, oh, maybe I don't really know this guy that well, or I forget who this guy is.
That's great to hear that, and we'll get into some examples of that in a minute, because I bet it's great stuff. One last thing. So as mobiles have been changing and all these applications have been coming out, there is this aspect also, I think, where it's kind of like socially a bit too much to call. Have you ever come across this situation, it's like it's a bit too try hard because texting is so easy these days. And you know, most friends these days, they text. They can't be bothered to call, right? Because it's just that much easier because you don't know what the other person's doing. But if you text, you know, it's just, you know, you're just sure they're going to get it and they're going to respond to you. So what do you think about that? Sometimes, depending on the situation, it's a little bit too much to call, so it's easier to, you know, text, and it's going to go, you know, you're not going to seem so try hard, or she's going to be a little bit weirded out maybe if you call. What do you think?
Oh, I couldn't agree with that more. And even I think the idea of the voicemail is sort of dead at this point too. It's like even you know when your friends call you, no one leaves voicemails anymore. Like in fact, I'm looking at my phone right now. I have 22 voicemails I have not listened to because I just figure, oh, if it's important, they'll text me. You know, and that's the thing. If you leave a voicemail for a girl, that's almost like the kiss of death because not only if she probably won't even listen to it, and if she does, you know, it's now recorded. She can play that back for her friends. I mean, I've seen some really bad situations, and I'm sure you've seen it too, on the internet, where they'll actually post really embarrassing voicemails that people have left. You know, like, oh, hey, this is Tom from the bar, blah, blah, blah. You know, so you don't want to be that guy. So realistically, like, text alleviates you of all that headache of calling, leaving voicemails, of whatever, just being awkward about it.
Right. Yep, totally. So, is texting the same with all girls? Are all girls the same, you know, no matter their background, where they come from, their age, you know, are they all going to be responsive? You know, should you put the emphasis on texting with all girls? What do you think?
Okay, that is a good question. The principles behind effective texting is universal for all girls. It's like attraction. It's like anything else that you do to attract a woman, that there are just universal things that if you kind of just adhere to the like the process, and you know that we lay out magnetic messaging, and we'll talk about it on this interview. If you adhere to that process, it'll work. Like it just works. And like I said, I've gotten testimonials from guys all over the world that using the system just works. What is not universal, however, is taking the text that I recommend using and using it on every girl, because you are absolutely right. There are certain girls that have a different sense of humor, that have different cultural values, that just have a different view of the world. So you absolutely should not use the same text, cut and paste the same text for every single girl. Mm-hmm. However, you should apply the same principles to every single girl. Right.
So you still got to be aware of, you know, who the girl is and be calibrated, basically. So, you know, be observant where
absolutely.
she's at. Yeah. And I had to say, you know, that's actually more important on texting because, like I was alluding to this earlier, when you got someone on the phone or face-to-face, you can see what's going on. But when you're texting, not so much, right? You got to guess more. So, you know, if you're not calibrated, I could see things going a bit messy.
Well, definitely. I mean, for me, I always like to sort of play it a little safe on the first text and make sure that like what I'm writing is stuff that I know she's gonna find funny. Like one of the things, it's funny. Like whenever I used to take girls' numbers, I used to say stuff like, I used to be like, you know, if say it was like a day game, say I met a girl in the daytime, and I was like, let's grab a cup of coffee sometime. And the girl says, oh yeah, it sounds great. I said, okay, cool. I'm gonna take you to like this little hole in the wall place. You know, it's a little mom and pop coffee shop. It's called Starbucks. You're gonna love it. And usually, most of the time, if a girl has a good sense of humor, she'll start laughing a little bit. You know, she'll giggle, whatever.
Yep.
And then if she found that funny when I said it, that's the type of humor I'm going to use when I follow up. Like, you don't want to, like, you know, one thing that guys don't really consider is that, like, if they had a good interaction with the girl, she was laughing, she was enjoying the interaction, you sort of have this blueprint of her sense of humor and what she finds funny and what she responds to emotionally. Right. And you should be hitting those points when you're texting her. You shouldn't now all of a sudden, because you have her number, you're texting her, turn around and become a completely different guy and start using all different types of, you know, humor or jokes or whatever. It's like, you know, the type of humor that this girl responds to. Those are the types of texts that you should be sending her.
And, you know, as you do that, you're building the relationship. You're building memories together. And as you say, if there's a weird disconnect, that's not going to work. So do you give people like copy and paste texts, like basically they're routines but for text? Are there any of those you do say are useful, or do you really kind of emphasize the personalization in every aspect?
No, you know, we do give we do give a copy and paste text because there are certain things that, I mean, you know, just because it's flirting and it's dating that are just funny. Like for instance, like like, I don't know, if a girl wrote something like, oh, you're very persistent, or, oh, you're very whatever, like the copy and paste text to that is, oh, so what is it about persistent guys that you like so much? You know, it's sort of like that cocky, funny response. It usually gets girls laughing, and it's just because, like, it's appropriate, and, like, realistically, you can say that to basically any girl in any culture, and they're probably gonna, like, at least giggle about it and think it's funny. So there definitely are a lot of copy and paste text like that just work because it's in the context of dating. You know, if a girl understands that you're interested in her, or that you're flirting, if you say something like that, it's going to work universally. However, though, I do recommend that guys mostly write their own text, personalize their text to their personality. Like, you know, a lot of times guys send me these text transcripts, and it's kind of weird for me. It's almost like surreal, because it's almost like me talking to this girl. Like, they're copying text that I wrote, you know, as examples or whatever, and it's like they're just taking the text I wrote and sending it off to these girls. So it's like I'm reading this, it's almost like it's like I don't know, it's like out of the Matrix. I feel like he keeps cloning himself and, like, showing up in, like, different situations. Like, I'm like, holy shit, like, this guy is just basically being me and, like, texting this girl, you know?
We work hard to make Dating Skills Podcast the most effective training program for social, dating, and relationship skills possible. If you like what we do, please take a moment out right now to rate and write a review for the podcast on iTunes. It makes a huge difference to our rankings on iTunes, and your feedback motivates us to work even harder to get you the knowledge you need. Yeah, so I mean, on this show, we've talked about, like, training wheels before, routines. You know, it's the same concept. And I think, I mean, I do think that some guys, it's kind of what you're talking about before. It's like the anxiety level, right? They got a lot to think about. They do kind of struggle to put out their own personalities straight away when they first get started, and they like to kind of rely on copy and paste. So I guess that's what's happening. Would you suggest they really try to avoid that, or it's okay for a little bit to, you know, copy and paste stuff?
No, you know, it's fine to copy and paste stuff. But what I recommend guys do, though, it's always my advice when guys are asking me, like, how they should copy and paste stuff. Copy and paste the stuff that you find funny. Don't copy and paste stuff because I wrote it and I said this is a good text. Mm-hmm. Like, if you genuinely find it funny, if you see a text that I wrote and you're like, oh, and you laugh about it, not only should you copy and paste that, but maybe you should use that template or that type of humor even when you're talking to girls too. Because again, like everyone thinks their personalities are of their own creation, and they are who they are. But realistically, we all copy things we see throughout our day. It's just a lot of times people forget where they get these, you know, the humor from, and then they attribute, oh, it's just my personality. Like, I know the stuff I'm writing to girls, it's probably like a mixture of, like, stuff I heard my friends say, stuff I saw in movies, whatever, and it comes together, and then, like, I take all those pieces and make it into my personality. But, like, you have to have that filtering mechanism where if you find it funny, use it. Don't just use stuff because you think, oh, okay, this is going to be a good text because Rob told me to write it, because then it's not going to be a good text. But if it's like, oh, Rob wrote this text and I think it's funny, and I see the humor in this, then absolutely go ahead and write that text and send it off.
Excellent stuff. Right, we've covered all the theory.
Yeah.
So let's get practical now. I'm sure some of the guys want to get practical here. So, you just grab the girl's number. Where do we start? What should we text first, and when? Okay.
Well, the when part isn't that important. Like, you know, a lot of guys fret, okay, like 3-day rule, should I text her like the same night? I mean, realistically, it doesn't really matter that much. I usually like to text girls the day after I got their number. You know, if I met them out at a nightclub or a bar, or you know, or maybe 2 days after, whatever. Like, to be honest, whenever I have time, like, I don't sit there and, like, schedule my life around when I'm going to text a girl. So whenever I have, like, a free moment, like a day or two later, I'll text her. I usually try not to wait more than like 3 days, because then I just think that, like, you know, she might start forgetting about you, and also it just comes off a little too transparent, like you're trying to play the game a little too much. So usually, like, okay, so it's a day or two later, and the first text you want to send a girl should be what I call a radar text. And what that means is you're simply just getting on her radar. You're getting her to register you into her head, into her phone, literally, like, you know, so she could program your number in. So to send over a radar text, my litmus paper test for a radar text is it should only contain some kind of statement or joke or whatever, there should be some kind of piece of information that requires no response from her. You see, a lot of the times guys will send off their first text hoping to get a response from her. They're like, oh, hey, it was really nice meeting you. Did you get home okay? And the reason they're writing the text is because they want the girl to validate them. They want her to write back and be like, oh, it was great meeting you too. And yes, I did get home okay. You know, they want to seem like a gentleman. So your first text, the rule and the filter to run that first text through is, if I write this text, like, there should be no way she can respond to it. If she wants to respond to it, fine. But, like, realistically, and I'm sorry, if that's vague, I'll just give you an example. So an example might be you just writing back, like, some joke that, like, you and her had together. Like, so for instance, if oh my God, I have to confess, I'm a little bit of a text addict. So I'm gonna be writing you some Shakespearean text. So a lot of times I'll say it to a girl as I'm taking her number. And usually girls will laugh about that. They'll just say, oh my God, you're a text addict, what does that even mean? I'm like, I love texting. Like it's just awesome. And they'll laugh or whatever. So a lot of the time my first text to her will just be I'm indulging my text addiction, or I'm relapsing in my text addiction just for you. Nice meeting you, Rob. And that's it. You also want to, you can add a little pleasantry like nice meeting you, or hope you got home safe, whatever. I mean, that stuff is okay as long as you lead off with that sort of value add text. Like, it adds a little value to her day. It adds a little humor. It adds a little flirtiness. It adds, even if it just reminds her of that great interaction you and her had, that first text should simply be some kind of statement that allows her to be like, oh yeah, like it was that fun guy from the bar or from the coffee shop or whatever. Just simply getting her to register you as like a fun, cool guy. You don't need anything. The text is completely non-needy.
Yeah, so I really like that. I think the way one of my friends once said to me, he would send a text, and sometimes you don't get a response, but afterwards he'd be like, I know when she saw that text, she smiled, or she laughed, right? And that's really what you kind of want to picture in your head, I think. And I think that's what you're getting at here. As long as like she looks at that text and she smiles or she laughs, it doesn't matter if she actually responds to it.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing. I mean, a lot of guys drive themselves crazy, like sitting by their phone waiting for that girl they just met to write back. And, it's like 15 minutes goes by and it feels like, 4 hours. And they're like, every time like their phone vibrates, they like jump all over it to check if it's her. And you don't want to do that to yourself either. You don't want to put yourself in that position. It's just a bad mindset to have. So that's why that first text, it's just kind of like, and a lot of the times I'll just write it, and then I'll turn my phone to silent, put my phone in my pocket, and I won't even think about checking my phone for a couple hours because I don't even want to check if she responded or not. I really don't care. Like, all that text is supposed to do is simply get her. I mean, realistically, in my head, the only thing that's supposed to happen is she's supposed to program my name into her phone. So she now has my name with a little sort of fun, flirty text that that kind of gets the ball rolling, in a sense.
Yep, totally. I like a point you brought up there. You put your phone on silent and you put it in your pocket. Mm-hmm. All right, and I think we spoke about this before. Just like for general reasons, I put my phone on silent about 5 years ago, and it's been on silent ever since. And I think another thing you brought up there was like the guy waiting for 15 minutes for that text, and it sounds like texting torture to me.
Yeah.
And what a waste of time! Like an incredible waste of time. And you're like building on negative processes in your mind. You're building on anxiety. You're not building good vibes towards this girl and this conversation. And, you're actually going to make the whole situation a lot worse in your head than it actually is. Because texting by its nature is, it takes time. Like, people are out, people are doing things, and sometimes they don't even respond for an hour or two. We've got meetings, we've got whatever, right? Yeah. I don't know, for me that sounds like really solid advice just there. It's just like, put your phone on silent and forget about it for a while, right?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, and again, and this is where these lessons kind of transcend texting and go into like greater lessons of just learning to be good with women is, that's a mindset you should have anyway. It's kind of like that detachment from outcome. Like, you're not always so attached to the outcome that you need something to happen. Like, you're waiting by your phone. Like, when you say a joke, you have to have her to laugh at, get her to laugh. Like, you don't care. Like, if she laughs, great. Like, it's awesome. But you shouldn't be saying funny stuff simply to get her to laugh. You should be saying funny stuff because it's an expression of your personality. It's a way that you're just putting yourself out into the world and you're letting her judge, like, okay, like, is this guy funny? Is this guy cool? Whatever. Because really, her opinion of you is really none of your business. You know, that's her personal decision. So all you can do is just be your most awesome self, throw yourself out there, and just kind of let the chips fall where they may.
Yep. Great. Okay, so now we've basically sent our first radar ping out, and she responded or she didn't respond. Okay, now if she didn't respond, what would you do next?
Okay, first of all, it doesn't matter at all. She didn't respond. Like, you know, expect her not to respond. Like, so that way, if she does respond, you know, it exceeds your expectations. But I always expect girls just not to respond. And then maybe a day or two later, and the way I like to do it is I like to do it on a day that I would like potentially to see her. So usually this will be like a Monday, a Tuesday, not so much a Monday, maybe like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Those are like nights I like to go on dates. So a Tuesday or a Wednesday, I'll initiate what Bobby and I call the key lock sequence. And it's a cool name to describe a very simple process. It's essentially the three-step process that you want to sort of put her through to get her excited to meet up with you for a date.
Okay, let's hear about it.
Okay, so the key lock sequence is essentially, the reason we gave it that name is because the way to think about it, whenever you're texting a girl, think about it like this. Think about it like taking a key, slipping it into a lock, turning the key, and then opening a door. Because that metaphor describes each stage of the key lock sequence. So stage one is to spark an emotion in her. So, and that's like taking the key and putting it in the lock. So the key, the metaphorical key that we're going to be using is some sort of statement or joke or something that's going to get an emotional response from her. And we spoke about this earlier. It's very easy to figure out what's going to get an emotional response from her because probably you said something during your initial interaction, your face-to-face meeting, that she probably laughed at, she thought was funny, she thought was interesting, that, you know, that definitely piqued her interest. Like, this girl didn't give you her number because you didn't, you know, this girl, let me say it's a different way. This girl gave you her number because you were able to spark some sort of emotion in her. So figure out what the high points of the interaction were, pick one of those high points, and that's the best key to use, you know, to spark that emotion. But, you know, sometimes guys legitimately can't think of anything to text. They can't think of something that happened. They can't think of a good first text. So that's where, if you want to go through and you want to use one of the cut and paste text, you know, one of the ones that I like to use, this is like my standby, whenever, you know, I can't think of something good to write, I'll just say, oh my God, I just had a cup of coffee brewed by the hand of God. Hope you're having a great morning too. That's like my standby text. Really silly, really stupid. It's not like any kind of comic genius, but for some reason that phrase, cup of coffee brewed by the hand of God, usually gets girls to laugh a little bit. Like, usually it's not what they're used to hearing from guys. Most guys write like, hey, what's up? Or what are you up to? Or whatever. But like, to say you just had a cup of coffee brewed by the hand of God, she hasn't seen that before. And there are a couple other texts I like to write. I'll give you an example of another one. I'll give you an example of two more, actually. One other one that I like to write sometimes, and this actually happened to me, was one time I walked out of my apartment in Manhattan, and I was walking down First Avenue, and I saw this like old man on a scooter wearing knee pads and a helmet, just like leering at women on the street. And I just thought it was like the funniest visual I've ever seen. So when I started, and actually, as soon as I saw that, I texted a girl that I'd met over the weekend. I said, I just saw an old man on a scooter with knee pads checking out babes. Made my whole morning. What's up with you? Okay, and again, like that usually gets a good response because it's a very visual thing. It's very funny. It captures her full attention, you know. And again, it's not like anything she's used to seeing. A third text sometimes I'd write, and this is a little more riskier. It's a little more high risk, high reward. But one thing I started writing to girls, sort of just to entertain myself, and then I realized this was a good way to spark an emotion, was I'd write, what are your feelings on having a love child? And again, that one's a little riskier because, you know, you're kind of implying that you and her are going to have sex, and, you know, it's a little bit more of a high risk text. But sometimes just, you know, that phrase love child and asking what her feelings on having a love child are, you know, if a girl has a good sense of humor and she's pretty confident in herself, a lot of the times that she'll laugh at that and kind of joke with you and write back and be like, oh, blah, blah. But ideally, the reason you're initiating this key lock sequence is because you want to get a response. You want, even if it's just ha, 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 or LOL, or oh my God, you're crazy. Those are really the best responses that you're going to get from this. Because the only thing that you want to do with this first text is get her to feel an emotion, whether that's laughter, whether that's intrigue, whether that's even being a little pissed off. A lot of guys are afraid to sort of like to spike the emotions in that downward way, to get her a little pissed off. But in this situation, even a little negative emotion is good, because the thing is that when you spark her emotions, you now have her full attention. And like I said earlier on this call, getting her full attention when trying to set up a date is like step 0. Like, you have to have her full attention. Like, she can't be like kind of looking at your text but driving, whatever. Like, if she sees your text when she's driving, she should pull off the road to be like, what the fuck? Like, who is this guy,
Right. And so you talked about some of the positive responses there. Smileys, haha, lol, all that stuff. And some of them could also be like her challenging you, right? Challenging you on what you said or something. That's still a positive response.
Definitely. And also, like I said, I went over all like the template text, like the cut and paste text. But realistically, this should be your first text should be something that's very personal to the interaction you and her had. I mean, I'll give you an example. Literally, I used like last week was I met a girl in Vegas a year prior, and I was in the state that she lived in. I was going on a road trip, so I was like, you know what? Let me just see if I can text this girl and get her out. So what I wrote to her was, I was like, hey, dorky Italian girl. She's Italian. I was like, hey, dorky Italian girl. And I kept calling her like a dork when we met. I was like, hey, dorky Italian girl. It's Rob, that charming guy from that time in Vegas. I'm like, like whatever. So that was the first text. It was like, hey, dorky Italian girl. It's Rob, that charming guy from that time in Vegas. And again, that's going to spark an emotion in her, because like she remembers, like, we were joking around. I was calling her a dork. It's kind of playing on that idea of like Vegas being the wild city. I'm kind of being a little cocky, funny, saying I'm that charming guy from that time in Vegas. Kind of making our brief conversation at some nightclub sound like it was so much more romantic and epic than it really was. And obviously that emotion worked, because it sparked an emotion in her. She remembered who I was, and we texted back and forth and ended up meeting up with that girl. So realistically, to spark that emotion, the best way to do it is to use a text that or to write something that's a little more personal, that's a little bit more of an emotional, that'll get an emotional response from her. But if you cannot think of that text, just go with the cut and paste text. Go with a text that hopefully will spark an emotion in her.
Right. And those cut and paste texts, as the examples you gave, often they're a bit like routines. We all have our personal routines just through experiences of life. It's the stories we tell all the time. It's the jokes, that we found funny and we tend to use a bit. It's just basically things that we found that worked in the past, and we just repeat them. But they often are from our own experiences, just like, your example of the guy in the road. And the other Starbucks example earlier, because I know you love hanging out in Starbucks.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, no, I mean, definitely, it's just like all those various different examples of like, just playing off ideas that are part of your day-to-day life, and that that you've gotten a good response from other women, and you have to really kind of look at it like, if you've gotten responses from other women that were positive, probably the girl you picked up are similar to those women, because like, we tend to attract girls who have like similar senses of humor. Like I said, like your personality, you have to trust that if it's worked on girls in the past, it'll probably work with this next girl, because she's probably not that much different than the other girls that you've hooked up with in the past.
Totally, and there's some golden texts you find which basically work in pretty much every situation, and it's just through trial and error that you find those texts. I want to put a personal note down here on like why I think it's important to have these kind of fallback texts, these copy and paste texts. It's just that most of the guys on this podcast have jobs, right? You're working, or you're busy with life. You're a student, and you've got maybe have a lot of stuff going on in your life. And we have a certain amount of energy per day, and we always have lulls, right? And there may be that time that, you're thinking, I got to text this girl because I met her 3 days ago, and, I don't want to leave it too long. But it just so happens you're wiped out, you've been working hard or whatever it is, and you can't think of anything. So what I think is a bad thing is for you to stress out and think, oh, I have to make something creative right now, when, you know, you're basically too tired. Your mind's a bit hacked out, and you can't think of anything. Don't stress about it. Everyone's in these situations. We all get tired sometimes when we've been working or whatever's going on. And, fall back on one of your default texts. It's a perfect time to do it.
It's absolutely, yeah, exactly. Because you don't want to be exerting too much mental effort, or you don't want to be stressing out. Exactly what you said. Like, it's just not worth it. I mean, dating's supposed to be fun. Texting girls is supposed to be fun. So it shouldn't be this big mental exercise. It should just be like, oh, okay, hot girl. Of course she's going to like me, and of course she's going to find this text funny. Cool.
All right, so what happens next?
All right, so now we're moving into the next step, step 2 of the 3-step sequence. So this is where you turn the key in the lock to unlock the door. So this is where a lot of guys fall short, because a lot of guys will get a girl laughing, and then they'll immediately, they'll either keep flirting with her, they'll keep joking around with her, and that's not a good idea. Like again, 1 or 2 texts, even 3 texts that get her laughing, joke around with her, flirt with her a little bit. If she's very responsive to that first text, going back and forth maybe 1 or 2 texts is fine, but you don't want to have like a 3-page, flirt fest, like back and forth, because that should be what you do on the date. So the thing is, a lot of guys fall into this trap, and I critique a lot of guys when they send me their transcripts, and I tell guys they're doing this. I'm like, you can't keep flirting with her on text, because if you keep doing that, you're going to deflate all that good sexual tension, all that good energy, all that good momentum that you have going. So you don't want to waste that having this long drawn out text conversation. So the next step, unlocking that door, is what I call making a connection. And it sounds like it's this I don't know, this like Dr. Phil-esque moment where you're going to make some profound connection with her, and it's not. When I say make a connection, all you need to do is show her that you see her as more than just a hot chick. And it can be as simple as complimenting her on something about her that you like, something that you remember that you want to talk about more. It's one of my favorite ways to do that. The second text is I'll just say, been thinking, say like a girl told me that she's reading some book that I've never read before and it sounded interesting. I'm like, been thinking a lot about, 50 Shades of Grey, and I wanna, pick your brain on it a little bit more, or whatever. It's essentially picking something out about her that you like beyond just the fact that she's hot and she likes you, and complimenting her on it. It may be her sense of humor. It may be, her fashion sense. Whatever it is that you liked about her when you met her, here's the time to kind of tell her why you liked it about her. And a lot of the times, I even like to combine the first step with the second step. So if I write a text about the old man on the scooter, right? Say I write that text, and the girl's like, oh my God, that's so funny, ha ha ha. Like, I saw a guy like that today too, and she tells me her story about some creepy guy that she saw, or some creepy woman, whatever, and she tells me some story. I'm like, I'll say ha ha ha, this is what I love about you, that you're so observant. Something like that. Like something as simple as you're so observant, or you have a great sense of humor, or whatever. But the whole purpose of the second text is just get her to feel like, oh, wait a minute, this guy is not just trying to fuck me. He's not just trying to get me out because I like him. This guy actually legitimately likes me for a reason beyond just the fact that I'm talking to him.
Okay, this stuff is really good. Listen up, everyone. Because this is something I think a lot of guys shy away from, because they've read a lot about attraction, and they don't feel like, and also they have this fear of kind of they're feeling like they're putting themselves out there when they say something nice to the girl or whatever. But this is really essential stuff, and it'll make it so much easier for you to meet up with her afterwards.
And I just want to point something out too. I agree with you. A lot of guys don't like doing this because they feel like if they throw out a compliment, they tell a girl that they like her or that they like something about her, they're afraid that it's going to make them look like they're low value, or that they're kissing her ass. But the funny thing is that it's the exact opposite. when you compliment her and tell her that you like something else about her beyond just her looks, it seems like that you are higher value because you have standards and that she's living up to those standards. So it seems like that, like, you're not just going out with every hot girl whose number you get, that like legitimately you found something about her that you like. Because like, if you're really like this cool, awesome guy who's meeting a lot of women, you meet a lot of hot women and you get a lot of numbers and you have a lot of opportunities to go on dates. So when you say like, oh wow, it's like, I really like your sense of humor, or I really like that book that you recommended, or whatever, she's going to start thinking like, oh, like this guy like has standards, and wow, I'm living up to those standards. So that's actually, it actually comes off almost like you're qualifying her. And again, it just brings so many positive, good emotions into like a very short text interaction. And that's why it's like a crucial step in this 3-step sequence. So, okay. And then as soon as like you make that connection, as soon as like you've connected with her and you feel that like she understands that, like you think she's unique, you think she's different, whatever, the final step, and again, this is where so many guys go wrong, and this is so stupid that they go wrong here, but the final step is you have to ask her on the date. See, a lot of guys, it's amazing, they hand me these text transcripts that are like 10 pages long, and they're like, oh, Rob, tell me where I went wrong here. And I'm like, you went wrong on the first page when you failed to ask her out on a date. Look, the purpose of text is not to get cute, it's not to build attraction, it's not to get to know her better. It's the only purpose of texting a girl is to get a date. So stop having these long conversations. There's no need for it. As if you get a girl emotional and you make some kind of connection, the only other thing to do now is the third step, which is like pushing the door open. It's what I call handling logistics. You say to her, awesome, let's get drinks tonight. Awesome, let's grab a cup of coffee. Awesome, whatever. Like, I keep saying awesome. I don't know.
That's definitely your default word there.
Yeah, but I often say that in a text, and you don't have to. But you know, essentially, what you should do though is just be like, you know, tell her. Don't ask her. Don't say, oh, are you free tonight? I'd like to take you on a date. Just be like, I mean, you can say, what are you doing later? I'm taking you out for a drink. But tell her what you want to do. I'm taking you for a drink. I'm taking you out to dinner. I'm taking you to a movie. Whatever like activity you want to do, just tell her that's what you're going to do. And, you know, you have a way better chance of getting her out just by telling her, rather than be like, oh, do you want to go see a movie tonight? Like, you may think that sounds polite, but it actually comes off kind of chumpy.
Yeah. So to avoid the chumpiness factor, would we have some kind of deadline, like a number of texts, or like a week, like just some kind of marker for guys to keep their eyes on? I know like deadline's a little bit too strict, but it's nice to have like a simple rule to follow.
Okay, well, a simple rule is simply that, you know, if you feel confident that you've hit those other 2 checkpoints, like you've sparked an emotion and you created a connection, that's the checkpoint. You know, it's not like, and again, sometimes it'll take you maybe 10 texts to spark an emotion and create a connection. Sometimes it might even take 15. It probably shouldn't take more than 15 texts before you ask. In fact, it shouldn't take more than 10 texts before you ask. So realistically, cut yourself off at 10 texts and just kind of bite the bullet and ask her, throw it out there, be like, what, you know, and again, as simple as, what are you doing later? ? Like, I want to take you out for a drink. Or what are you doing? Or like, are you free tonight? Let's grab a drink. Something as simple as that. And again, like when I say like, to just tell her what you want to do, you absolutely should. But if you want to add a little bit of like politeness, if you want to like kind of, you know, be a little bit of a gentleman, just ask her, are you free tonight? What are you doing later? One of the things I used to like to do to girls is say, what are you doing at 8:03? And again, because it's kind of a weird time, so she's like 8:03, like why, you know? And so, you know, just kind of like a funny little flirty thing you can throw in there, or like, but you know, just ask her, okay, what are you doing later? I'm taking you for a drink. I'm taking you to play pool. I'm taking you for this. I'm taking you to go bowling. Whatever activity you want to do, just tell her like we're doing this later. And only really 3 things are going to happen there. She's going to say yes. That's the ideal situation. So okay, you know, it sounds great. You know, I'll meet you at 8, whatever. And you know, and if you do this right and you ran a good, she's attracted to you, that'll and she's free. That'll happen. You know, a pretty high percentage of the time. There's the other scenario where she'll say no, but legitimately because she cannot, because like she has work, she has other plans, whatever. And you know that this is a legit excuse because she'll say, oh, I can't tonight, but let's do it Wednesday. Let's do it Thursday, Friday, whatever. If she suggests another day, that's just as good as her saying yes. So she suggests another day, you're golden. And then there's the third scenario where she says no. And if she says no, if she's like, oh, I can't, or she's like, I don't even know you well enough yet, or whatever, read what she said, consider it, and then just give her what she wants. And again, a lot of guys don't read in between the lines of what a girl texts back. If she says, oh, I can't, the guy just immediately walks away with his tail in between his legs and says, womp, womp, oh, well, she doesn't like me, I guess I failed. And that's really not what happened at all. If she's, like my rule is if she's writing back to you, she's responding to your text, like she's interested and you can get her out. You just have to play the game right. So whatever she writes back, if she's like, I don't even know you well enough yet to go on a date with you, or I don't even know you well enough yet to grab a drink with you. You write back, oh, you're absolutely right. My name's Robert Andrew Judge. My favorite color is green. My favorite animal is a koala bear. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a baseball player. And a secret I never told anyone is that I like that song from Titanic. You kind of have fun with it. Like, give her your whole resume, joke around, joke with her, make her see that you're, let her, tell her what she needs to know about you. And she says something like, I don't know, I don't drink sometimes. Sometimes like girls will say, I don't drink. You say, okay, oh, that's totally cool. Like, we're going to go for this totally awesome new beverage called coffee, non-alcoholic, whatever. Like, have fun with it. Again, like don't look at this like if she says no, oh, this is game over, and now I just need to delete her number and walk away. Like when she says no, the game's just begun. Like you start playing a little bit more. You start looking at what she's writing and decipher those clues, see what she needs to get her, what she wants to hear to get her out, and just kind of go that route.
Man, I think this is really good. It's a very simple model. I think it's great for beginners in particular because, it is so simple. It's just this 3-step thing. And it doesn't take long either. Like you say, it should be under 10 texts or whatever. So it avoids all the complications people can get into with this. So it's just really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So before we round this off, there's some questions. There's a question I ask everyone who comes on the podcast.
Sure.
And I didn't ask it to you last time because I hadn't started asking this question. I think it came at a later point, so I'm asking you this time. If you're a complete newbie, you haven't read anything and you're just starting out and maybe you haven't got much experience with women, what are the top 3 things you would recommend a guy does to get success with women as fast as possible?
Okay, that is an excellent question. Number 1 would be to draw a line in the sand and decide how many approaches you're going to do a day, and you stick to those number of approaches come hella high water. I don't care if all you do is walk up and ask a girl for the time. If that's all you can do, that's fine. But if when I started out, I said to myself, I'm going to approach 2 girls a day. And that's not a lot of girls. Approaching 2 girls a day is not a lot. But I used to go out on my lunch break at work, and I didn't care what happened. I wouldn't let myself go back to work until I did my 2 approaches. And I really think that really kind of solidified some really good habits into just forcing myself to go through it. Because that's the thing. It's I love dating advice. When I started out, I was reading tons of books and ebooks and audios, and I was overloading myself with information. But the thing was that I was going out and doing it. And 2 approaches were my minimum, and so I was doing a lot more if I was going out in a nightclub or a bar or whatever. It was a weekend, but 2 approaches was my absolute minimum. I had to do that every single day because if you're not doing the approaches, you're just spinning your wheels. If you're just listening to these interviews and you're not actually going out and talking to girls, you're never going to get better. It's like reading books on working out and never going to the gym. Everyone knows how ridiculous that is. So, the first thing is you got to draw a line in the sand. 2 girls. Or whatever. For me, it's 2 girls. But for you, it might be 5 girls. For you, it might be 1 girl. Whatever it is, just draw that line in the sand.
Right. So that... Right, you're saying set a rule of the number of approaches you're going to do per day or per week and stick to it. Exactly.
And I would say do it per day because per week you could start saying, oh, well, I'll right. It's kind of like you put things off, whatever. Like in fact, I would even say do it at a set time period. Like I used to have that 1 hour lunch break at work when I used to work in Manhattan, and I would just go out on the streets of Manhattan for an hour, and I would have to do 2 approaches. And I was scared shitless to do those approaches. I hated it. I was so afraid the first couple approaches I did. But I was like, if I don't do this, if I don't take action, I'm never going to really have sex again, or I'm never going to have sex with a hot girl. And I always saw that end goal. So that's why I did it. So for anyone listening, if you really have to draw that line in the sand and say, even the approaches suck, who cares? Even if it's just like, oh, what time is it? Whatever. And again, I don't recommend being a pussy when you approach, but if you absolutely have to, you're better off being a pussy than being a spectator, Yeah. Okay. So that's rule 1. Rule 2, or the second piece of advice I would give them is you have to decide what's more important to you. And again, this sounds like it's like a little inner game thing, but this is actually, I think, one of the most crucial things a guy can accept is that, I've been coaching for, a long time, 3.5 years. And I've noticed there's two resources, I guess resources or assets or whatever, that guys will choose. Guys who are good with women choose one resource, and guys who suck with women choose the other resource. And those resources are guys who suck with women. Their most important resource is their pride, right? Like their ego, who they think they are. So you'll watch a guy who, you always know the guys whose first resource is their pride, because they're the guys who will only approach if they think it's gonna go well, and they're always kind of second guessing things, and they always want to know, oh, what should I say? What should I do in this situation? And the reason that they're always because they're so afraid to fail, because it's almost like the way I think about it, it's like, when you play like Mortal Kombat or like a video game Street Fighter, and you have this is such a dorky analogy, but just bear with me.
I'm totally with you. I've been playing Street Fighter X Tekken like crazy this week.
Okay. So and when you play these video games, you have like the health meter, right? Like every time you get punched, like your health meter goes down a little bit, and that's how a lot of guys view their pride. Like they have this finite amount of pride, and like if they get like blown off by some girl, it's like a punch, and like they lose like a certain chunk of their pride, and they're afraid like, oh, if I lose all my pride, I won't know who I am, and I'll be a loser, and whatever. So to them, they're always protecting their pride, and every decision they make is based on running it through. Oh, okay, how is this going to affect my pride health meter? Okay. So that's a resource, guys who don't get good with women, and guys who suck, and guys who never get good at this. That's their most important resource. Now, the guys who get good with women, all the guys that I know that kill it with women, and this is a choice that I made a long time ago, is there's a second resource that's more important than pride. It's an asset that you have that is definitely also finite. There's definitely a finite amount of it. And guys who are good with women understand that they have to prioritize this resource over their pride. And that resource, the resource that's most important, is your time. See, a lot of guys don't think, they think, oh, I have all the time in the world, blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, the clock's ticking. Every second you're losing that health meter, and there's nothing you can do to get it back. So this applies to both a micro scale and a macro scale. So on the micro scale, when I go out to a bar or a nightclub, I don't really care about getting rejected. I'd rather figure out if I have a shot with a girl or not as quickly as possible. Because the worst thing in the world, in my opinion, is to walk up to a girl who really I have no shot with, have a nice, long, polite conversation with her for about a half hour, and then at the end of that half-hour conversation, she pats me on the shoulder and says, well, it was really nice meeting you, and then she walks off, and I lost a half hour of my night. So the thing is, when I approach a girl, I'm approaching in a way, and I'm not being like a jerk about it, but I'm approaching in a certain way that I can know within the first 15 seconds of approaching her whether she's attracted to me or not, whether it's going to go anywhere or it's not. And if it's not going to go anywhere, I can just move on to the next girl and save my time, because my time is the most important asset to me. And then that's on a micro scale. On the macro scale, your entire life, you only have a finite amount of time to learn, pick up, to go and meet women, and that clock is ticking. And for older guys, that clock is ticking. If you want to keep hooking up with younger girls, that window of opportunity is going to close one day. You're going to stop being able to get boners or whatever, and one day you're going to die. So, time kills all the greatest seducers. Casanova, Don Juan, Errol Flynn, all these guys, eventually they die, and you can't fuck a girl when you're dead. So
even Hugh Hefner.
You have to know when they will die. It's even the hep is susceptible to time. So the thing is that like every day that that you delay this idea of like approaching girls, because every day you go out, you theoretically could approach a girl, and the reason you're not is because you have your pride. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, when I get my hair cut, when I lose some weight. I've had guys tell me, oh, I can't do this until I lose 5 more pounds. Dude, do you think it really matters? Like, I'd rather like get rejected, but at least start the learning process, being 5 pounds overweight. Because absolutely, if you if they're making changes in your life, keep making those changes. I'm not saying don't make changes in your life. You want to lose weight, change your appearance, change your clothes. That's great. Get a haircut, whatever. Do those things, but do the approaches too. Because it doesn't matter if you get rejected. Like rejection by like girls, it's going to happen anyway, but you might as well get them out of the way early so you can maximize your time rather than trying to wait to get it perfect because you have this, because you're so afraid of getting rejected because it's going to affect your pride health meter. So that one choice, and again, it's a very simple choice to make, but you have I would point to the second thing I would tell guys is understand you're making that choice every time you leave the house and decide what's more important to you, your pride or your time.
Excellent point. All right, number 3.
Number 3 is simply get comfortable with your sexuality and get comfortable escalating. Too many guys, they're afraid to escalate. They're afraid of being sexual with women. They're afraid to simply make a move and go for it. Like, a girl will be more attracted to you if you try to kiss her and she turns her head than if you never try to kiss her at all. See, so many guys think, oh, if I try to kiss her and she doesn't kiss me, or if I try to hold her hand, or if I try to ask her out on a date, or even if I approach her, that this girl is going to lose respect for me and she's not going to like me, and then I'm a loser. The fact is that whenever I approach a girl, whenever I try to kiss a girl, whenever I try to escalate on a girl, I expect her to say no. That's the difference between me and every other guy. Most guys try to kiss a girl because they want the big movie moment where she's gonna kiss him. It's gonna be like, doves are gonna fly out, and I think that's ridiculous. In my opinion, I walk up to girls assuming the worst, and if she likes me, she kisses me the first time, it exceeds my expectations. My expectations are pretty low for myself, and your expectations should be low too. But with those low expectations, you should be escalating constantly.
Thanks, man. Those are some great free rules you have there. Definitely effective. And it's been great talking with you again today. This has been a really animated conversation today, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too, Angel. Thank you so much, and I hope guys, take a couple good takeaways from it.
Yep, certainly. So this is basically based on the work you did for your magnetic messaging product with Bobby Rio, and it's all about texting. And I believe just goes a bit further than the stuff we talked today. It also goes into relationships. I did want to talk about that, but we totally ran out of time because we covered a lot of stuff already.
Yeah, I know. I apologize. I know I'm a little verbose in my answers, but I'm just really passionate about this stuff, and that passion really comes through in the book too. So the book goes through everything. It goes through when you're trying to meet up with a girl, if a girl's flaking on you. I kind of troubleshoot some different responses. Girl says, "Oh, who is this?" Or what do you look like? Or trying to get girls off online dating sites, that kind of thing. We cut with basically anything you ever wanted to know about texting is encapsulated in this book.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Rob. Been great having you.
Definitely. Thank you.
To get more information on today's guest, including their profile, background, company information and ratings, and of course all their products and their reviews, go to datingskillsreview.com/datingskillspodcast and select the relevant episode. You'll find all the information there. Do you have questions about dating, pickup, women, sex, or relationships? Get them answered by us and our guests on the podcast by sending them to ask@datingskillsreview.com by email. That's ask@datingskillsreview.com. Your info is kept anonymous and you'll get some rock-solid personal advice for free on the podcast. Speaking of free high-quality advice, have you got the Fast Track Manual and DSR Dating Gold yet? These are high-quality freebies we've prepared for you to get you started. The Fast Track Manual gives you a step-by-step process to use to learn to get good with women as fast as possible. Readers say it's flawless. DSR Dating Gold is a daily email with one piece of golden, highest quality advice taken from the hundreds of products we've reviewed. Get both of these by going to www.datingskillsreview.com/fast track. That's FASTTRACK. And accelerate that learning curve so you can get good in months, not years.
Dating Skills Podcast is brought to you by Dating Skills Review. Dating Skills Review is the Amazon.com of dating advice for men. If it exists, we have it. We help you find the best advice fast, so you can get good with women in months, not years. Learn more at www.datingskillsreview.com.